What's up, everybody? My name is Kier, and you are watching the important things that really matter. Today, we're going to be going into the passport bros and why you, if you are a passport bro, why you should not bring your foreign wife back to the United States. Why you should not bring your foreign wife back to the United States. So before we get into it, would you please like, would you please share, and would you also please subscribe? I'm giving a lot of very useful information for men and for women also too. So I'm trying to get the channel to grow, and I appreciate any and all help that you can give me. So here we go. What is the reason why, by being a passport bro, what is the reason why you do not need to bring your wife, or shouldn't bring your wife, back to the United States? Well, this is what we're going to go into today. Now, there are a lot of reasons why a lot of men may want to go get a foreign wife. Some men feel may not be that many traditional women here in the United States anymore. Some men may feel that the risk far outweigh the advantages of getting married here in the United States. The risk being that, okay, fine, if the marriage doesn't work out, the person can end up turning around and taking half the person's money, which could put them in a horrible financial position for many years. And these are valid concerns. There are some men that may not necessarily be into the modern independent woman. Of course, the modern independent woman is going to have her own money, may have a very good paying job. In addition to that, she may not necessarily really want to have as many children that you want. She may not cook and clean like you might want in a traditional woman. Some men like a modern woman, and some men like a traditional woman. One of the things that you have to understand, though, and so it's nothing wrong if a man wants a modern woman. There's nothing wrong with that at all. A modern woman is going to possibly have a very good paying job. A modern woman may not have any problem with paying 50% of everything, 50% of the bills, 50% of going out. Because of course, if a woman is a modern woman and she's equal and independent, she shouldn't expect the man to be 100% traditional when she may not be a traditional woman. And so she shouldn't have, if she's a modern woman, she shouldn't have a problem paying 50% of everything, because she's a modern independent woman, got a good paying job. She shouldn't have a problem paying 50%. In addition to that, there are some modern women that are taking care of their husbands, literally taking care of their husbands. Their husbands sit at home. Their husbands watch soap operas all day. The husbands may clean. The husbands may cook. The husbands may take care of the children. So in these particular situations, you have a complete role reversal of the man and the wife, because there are literally men that are sitting at home and doing the more traditional role of a woman, especially if she's got a good paying job. Now, I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that. That if that's something that you like, especially if you're one of these men that like being taken care of by a woman, then a modern woman is for you. And if you're a man that believes in equality and an independent woman, a modern woman is for you also too. And you should expect her to pay 50% of everything, because she's equal, she's independent, and she's got her good paying job. So if you with a modern woman, why would you spend all your money and then she keeps all her money? So there are advantages to being with a modern woman, especially if you're a man that wants your wife to take care of you while she works. You stay at home and watch soap operas. But there are some men that are into traditional women. Now, I myself, I'm a person who is into traditional women. And actually, that's pretty much the way I was raised, because really and truly, my grandmother took care of me. And so as I was growing up, I would be in elementary school and I would come home for lunch, and it felt very, very good to come home for lunch and have a home-cooked meal for lunch when I was in elementary school. And I would come in, I'll smell food cooking in the air during lunchtime. When lunch was over, I ran back up to the school. My school was about 5 long blocks away. But as a kid, I felt very, very good coming home during lunch and having a nice warm cooked meal by my grandmother. And then at the end of the day in elementary school, when I came home at the end of the day of end of school, then I would come into the house and I would smell food cooking in the air, and I know my grandmother's cooking dinner. It was a very, very good feeling that somebody was cooking lunch for me, somebody was cooking dinner for me, somebody was fixing breakfast for me as a traditional woman. And my grandmother fell in that traditional role because even though my grandmother was my grandmother really was like really and truly my mother. Okay, so even though I had a mother and my mother stayed in the same house, my grandmother pretty much took the role of the mother. And so anyway, having said that, the point that I'm making about being with somebody that's traditional, as a kid, I felt really good coming home and smelling food being cooked in the air for me and my sister. And so anyway, the reason why a lot of men want to be a passport bro, get their passports and go overseas, is because they have found out that when they go overseas, family roles have been maintained. The roles of the man have been maintained, the roles of the woman or the wife has been maintained, and the family structure has been maintained. Not as it is here in the United States or in Canada or in the UK. So if you're looking for a traditional woman, you might have a little bit of difficulty trying to find a traditional woman in the United States, in Canada, in the UK, and maybe even some of the Western European countries also too, possibly. But the countries where the family structure is still in place, clear role for the husband, clear role for the wife, clear role for the children, okay? Those countries will be in Central America, South America, Mexico, Africa, many of the Caribbean islands, but mainly those areas or those countries where the family structure has still been in place are in the places which I mentioned. Central America, South America, Mexico, Africa. Then you may have some of the other places like maybe the Philippines, Thailand. The family structure is still in place even though these countries have their issues. So many of the reasons why many of the passport bros are going overseas to the main countries which I mentioned is because they want a wife that has been taught to be a lady. They want a wife that's been taught to be a wife, and they don't want someone that's their role model is a female rapper giving them permission and telling them, hey, go out there and have fun and screw around with whoever and every person you have, and you should have no negative feelings or negative thoughts about what type of lifestyle that you want to live. There are a lot of men that do not want somebody who has some female rapper as their role model, giving them bad advice. So this is the main reason why men want to go overseas to get them a wife. What are some of the main reasons why you do not want to bring your wife, your foreign wife, back to the United States? Well, it's pretty much the same reason as to why you left the United States to begin with. If you bring your wife back to the United States, and even if she's been trained properly by her mother and her father, she's been trained how to be a lady, been trained how to be a wife, been trained how to be a mother, they're going to be heavily influenced by the media, by the television, by stuff that they're reading in the newspaper and stuff, by the radio. They're going to be heavily influenced by other women. And so we're going to go into that a little bit more. Let me give you an example. Oh, before I go into that, let me say that many of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, will fall up under fair use. Fair use. There is a guy that I knew. When he brought his foreign wife back, for years, they had a beautiful relationship. For years, she had a number of children for him. For years, she cooked. For years, she cleaned. She took care of the children. She took care of the house. She took care of the husband. In the traditional role, okay? What had happened was she had raised a number of kids. They were a happy family for many, many years. Well, what happened one day was the wife came to the husband and said, hey, she wanted to work. And since she wanted to work, he said, well, hey, his wife is a good wife. Wife took care of everything. And the kids started getting older. And so he said, okay, if you want to work, you can work if you want to. So she started going to work. He started noticing his wife was coming home at the end of the day with an attitude. So he's like, what's the problem? It's like, you never came home with an attitude. And the man found out that when his wife was going to work, other women were talking in her ear. Other women were talking in her ear. Other women were talking in her ear. And she was coming back because of what was being told to her from the women that were on her job. And he asked her, what's the problem? What's the problem with you with this attitude all of a sudden? And so his wife was like, I sat up here and had all these babies. I didn't need to have all these babies. And so he's looking at her. He's like, I only probably need to have 1 or 2 babies. And I had all these babies for you. And then she was like, and also too, I could take half of your money. So he sat there, he listened to his wife. Never had these problems before. They never had any problems. Really didn't have no major arguments or anything. But when she started working and the women started talking in her ear, then all of a sudden this happy wife became very unsatisfied with her life. Even though her husband went out and worked every day and brought his money home to take care of his wife and to take care of his children. Now she starts work, now she's unhappy. Well, she's unhappy because she's listening to other women on her job. That's one particular situation. So this is one of the reasons why you don't particularly want to bring your wife back to the United States. There's another guy that had brought his wife back to the United States. He is an African-American male. The other guy was an African-American male also too. This guy, he married a woman who was from Africa. Married a woman that was from Africa. His wife had a mother. His wife had a father. So she knew in her country, the family is very well established. And his wife came from Ethiopia. Her family was well established. The family structure itself in their country is well established. Not only is it well established in Ethiopia, but it is looked down upon tremendously if a woman has a child out of wedlock. In other words, she has a child and she's not married. Over in her country, you have a child and you're not married, they look at you like you crazy. They will shame you if you don't have a husband and you walk around with a child. And it's so bad over there, to my understanding, the family structure is so much emphasized in that particular country that no man will be bothered with them if the woman has a child and she's not married. You know, a single mother. And you better not have two children. You better not have one. Because the society puts pressure on them like society used to put pressure on women back in the 1930s and 40s. You better not get pregnant by somebody and you don't have a husband. And a lot of times, if that had taken place down in the South during the 30s and 40s or so, a lot of times they would take the daughter and ship her up north. I'm not saying that you would do that. I'm not saying that that should be done, but I'm saying you had pressures from society, pressures from the country to keep the establishment of the family in place. You have low rates of women having children and not being married. You have little to no women having any children out of wedlock, almost zero single parents. So what ends up happening, this man's woman came from that type of environment. They have a beautiful marriage. They're rarely arguing. They're getting along. They're working on things together to build something together. And what ended up happening was this guy had taken his wife to one of his family events. Well, at the family event, there were a lot of the African-American women at this family event. So while they were there at this family event, his wife got his plate and started putting food on her husband's plate for her husband, and brought the plate back to her husband and was about to sit down. And the women in his family looked at her and said, he can fix his own plate. Why are you fixing his plate? So the wife is looking at her husband and looking at the women, and the women was emphasizing, why are you fixing your husband's plate? He can get up and fix his own plate. And so this woman, who is from Africa, from Ethiopia, she looking at her husband, she looking at the women, she looking at her husband, looking at the women. She almost don't know what to do, because now she's getting pushed back from the husband and the women that were in his family. And so anyway, after the event was over with, the husband, who was an African-American male, started talking to his wife. He said, I want to talk to you about something. And she was like, what is it? She's like, everything that took place today. All those women that told you not to fix my plate, he told her, every single solitary one of those women, African-American women, that told you that, and even the other ones that were there, he said, all of them do not have a man. Zero of the women at that event had a boyfriend nor a husband. And so he was explaining to his wife, do not take advice from women who don't have a man. Do not take advice from women who don't have a husband, never been married. And so this is some of the problems that you're going to have if you bring your wife back to the United States. I'll tell you another story. I met this guy, him and I were pretty cool, and he was down in Brazil, met his wife down there, and while he was down there in Brazil, he had some business to take care of down there, met his wife down there. They got along very, very well, had a excellent relationship down there in Brazil. And while he was down there, he had asked her to marry him. Now, this brother had come from a large family. And when he had talked with the woman, he had let her know that he wanted a large family because that's where he came from. He came from a large family. Well, anyway, they took care of all the paperwork and all the stuff that needed to be done to get her to be brought back over here to the United States from Brazil. Guess what happened? Brought her back from Brazil, and he was in the process of building his family with his wife. Well, what ended up happening was his wife tells him, after being in the United States for a while, I'm only having 2 children. I'm not having no, she told him, I'm not having any more than 2 children. Now, when the guy was telling me this, he was angry, very angry, when his wife was telling him, I'm only having 2 kids and I'm not having any more than 2 kids. And evidently, when she was down in Brazil, she was like, yeah, if you want to have a large family, that's great. We can do that. get her back over here to the United States. All of a sudden, after she had talked with some people, some of the women here in the United States, they done convinced her, why you gonna have all them babies? You don't need to have no more than maybe 1 or 2 kids for him. And so while the guy was telling me this, he was extremely upset. He was pissed off because he was like, I brought this woman back over here to the United States. They were about to have a nice sized family. And then she just tells him one day, oh, we're having 2 kids and we're not having anything more than 2 children. And that's it. And I'm like, dang, man, are you serious? He said, yeah. And it was very obvious. He was pissed off. So there's another reason why you may not want to bring your wife back to the United States, your foreign wife back to the United States. This subject here is part 1 of the Passport Bros, and do not bring your foreign wife back to the United States. And also too, I like to say this too, if you are an African-American man, you can go to another country and get you a black woman. You can go to Central America and get you a black woman. I'm talking about if you're an African-American man, you can go to Central America and get you a black woman. You can go to South America and get you a black woman. Central America, black women in Mexico, black women in Brazil, black women all over South America. You, of course, have black women in Africa. So if you're an African-American male and you want a traditional woman, these are some of the countries that you may want to go where you could still get you a black woman, and she came from a country where the family structure is still in place. And so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You hear about a lot of people going to the DR, in other words, the Dominican Republic. You got a lot of men that go to the Dominican Republic. There was a lady down there from the Dominican Republic who had got her DNA tested. Now she's light-skinned. She found out that over 50% of her DNA was African. In actuality, most of the people down in the Dominican Republic, most of them have at least 30% or over 50% of African DNA in them. The reason they do, because the transatlantic slave trade came from Africa, went through all the Caribbean islands, went to Europe. The trans-African slave trade went to Europe, went to North America, Central America, South America. This is how prevalent the transatlantic slave trade was. But anyway, I'm gonna cut this short. Please like, please share, and please subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel, and I will see you later on part 2 of the Passport Bros and why you do not really want to bring your foreign wife back here to the United States. Peace.